Anxiety would reveal about the future if you can free yourself from the they to a certain extent. You can't completely. And if you can stop fleeing from the present and trying to live in it, you can see why this account was popular in the 60s, right? You remember beatniks used to like Heidegger. Okay, well, this is why. You try to live in the present. If you try to do that, the future will begin to look like a project, which Heidegger characterized as being free for and from. Being free for your projects and being free from your sort of attempt to get away from yourself. Okay? And someone during break mentioned this to me. I think it's true. Being free in this sense is not an easy thing to want to be. Let me just say that right away. I mean, being free from the they is already a problem for most folks, right? I mean, how many people want to live, you know, in Bainbridge Drive and have the only red, white, and blue house? I mean, even that tiny little transgression could make some people into a nervous wreck. I mean, sure, some people are afraid of death and other people are afraid of being seen carrying People magazine. I mean, we live in a society that may be far too superficial for the account I'm giving, so I'm hoping to try to make some sense out of it. I mean, different things bother different people. I mean, the culture that really scares me is the one in which death has no significance for our projects. That's the culture that in which the self is under siege. As long as Heidegger, when he was young, could write this narrative of the self, this rather dramatic existential narrative about I'm going to realize that I will die, and then I will choose an authentic project and carry it out, and I will free as many constraints as I can from the they. I will stop fleeing from myself. He even has a word in here for what he would probably call this lecture, which is chatter. You know, I'm going to free myself from the chatter of every day and talk deep thoughts in the Black Forest. Well, I've sort of sketched the account for you, and the sad part about it is it all sounds rather quaint, and it would make a nice mini-series. I mean, we are living in a situation where even these basic accounts of the self, like Heidegger's, have become sort of ironies. I'm not trying to put it down too quickly. I'm just trying to explain why anybody would listen to it today. You'd listen to it today only because it is an interesting story from a period not too long ago. I mean, after all, the beatniks love this account. They used to say, oh, I've read Heidegger, by which they meant there's a famous little set of notes where you could pick all this stuff up without actually reading Being and Time. And it was quite popular. The book itself, I only know a couple of other people that have read. Who cares, right? You know, they get it from the Cliff Notes. But in any case, let me give you the what I think is the powerful account, and then its criticism, the final sort of punchline of it. With Heidegger, we choose a project in full awareness that being is always being towards death. For Heidegger, this doesn't cripple our action, but it makes us see that just like if we wanted to write a beautiful poem, we would plan an incredibly grand last stanza or whatever. When we choose a project, we want to choose one that will make of our life a complete thing, a thing with meaning, a connected story, a story worth telling. So that's the idea, is that the recognition of one's own nothingness in one's own death as the ultimate possibility. This recognition and acceptance frees us for our projects. It allows us, for one thing, to engage in a bit of what I consider, if you wanted to sum up the wisdom of the East, you know, Oriental wisdom in just one sentence, it might be something like, don't sweat the small stuff. I mean, there was a real well-known Buddhist who told me I could sum up the Tao and the Gita and all that for you quickly. It's this: don't sweat the small stuff. You Westerners, you spend all your time sweating the small stuff. Heidegger here says, look, if you really internalize as a part of your self-story the knowledge that you too will be dead, gone, nothing, that will be a freeing and liberating experience. But you have to be able to, like, work through it, as it were, to use a psychoanalytic phrase, to work through it. Well, what does it allow us to escape from? Well, I actually have to say that this moment in existentialism has certainly been good for me, I think. Just been a healthy thing for me. It cut short therapy. I went to a therapist once. I went 3 times. And on the 3rd visit, I went, oh, by the way, I have a question. Why are we born to suffer and die? And she went, that was the end of therapy for me. I figured that if she couldn't help me with, like, my fundamental problem, she wasn't going to do much good on the trivial problems. I mean, you know, I had a big problem. Why are we born to suffer and die? She just went, I mean, you know, she said, well, I could write you prescriptions for some Valium. And I said, no, thanks. I drink. I don't need it. I belong to a large club. I'm a drunkard. No, anyway. What it does is this. It makes you, for me, it's made it easier to talk to groups, to teach classes and to talk to groups of students and not to be afraid of cameras and stuff like that because, I mean, in the end, we're all dead. In the end, Johnny Carson, his body will, like, you know, turn into dust. In the end, the earth will shrivel up like a cinder and fall into the sun. And in the end, it's not the Big Bang anymore. Now they call it, I think, the big balloon, kind of like a bad condom. The big balloon of the universe will stretch out, pop back together, and poof, nothing more. Now, for me, that's kind of a kick, because that means that if I screw up today or tomorrow or right now, I'm not going to worry about it too much. I'm going to feel free to engage in my project without worrying about what they told me about how I should do philosophy. So I think there's a moment of truth or a moment of interest in Heidegger's account. Also, it's made me rather short and sharp with small talk. It really does. I mean, it makes me where people go, oh, gee, you know, the weather today is just, you know. I mean, I'm sorry, but I prefer conversations about sex, religion, politics, of course, being a man, sports. But if it's not something, you know, that grabs me, I feel perfectly free to go, well, let's chatter. I haven't got time for it. Be dead soon. Can't do it. Now, the most pathetic example of fleeing from sort of came up on my way out of the lecture. I happen to be a smoker. I don't advocate it for anyone in here or watching me on the tape. I don't advise smoking. But we have a culture now where the most obvious example of fleeing from death is this utter obsession with being young until it's obscenely too late for it. Until this is fleeing from yourself in such a way that it's madness. Who wants to be the world's best-looking 111-year-old person? I mean, what is the point in that, for God's sakes? I just, you know, this is something that I don't follow. I mean, my grandfather was a good man. He died at 78. I think that's good luck and plenty long enough. Suit the hell out of me. But why do we have 90-year-olds running up steps wearing Nikes and dating 17-year-olds? I mean, this is not working. It's not working. And I'm not telling old people to go away. Hell, I'm getting there myself. It's ridiculous. You take 30-year-olds, they're trying to look like 11-year-olds. You know, I mean, it works all the way up and down the spectrum. Every 40-year-old housewife wants to have a baby like Demi Moore, be beautiful naked with her stomach out to here. I mean, it's just not working for us. In a way, it's fleeing from death. And what I'd like to say about it is this. You can eat all the tofu you want and jog as long as you like. And compared to geologic time, your life's going to be gone like that anyway.